and there is a pressure buildup, and there's going to be a pop out, and we're going to pop through to the other side. And that's when the majority of people are going to demand and want to go into more evolved consciousness and
Yes.
less of the violence and the primary kind of, caveman type of communication and behavior. And who knows, maybe cavemen were a little bit more sophisticated than we've been acting. So,
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. This is Quantum Mysteries with your hosts, Oriah Mirza and Dennis Strahl. Hello, Dennis.
Well, hello. This is episode 3, folks,
Yes.
of our Quantum Mysteries podcast, and we're going to continue to discuss Oriah's wonderful book. Your book has such a cool cover. Could you hold it up so everybody could see it?
Yes. Thank you.
Because it just now actually got published. Now, where can they purchase your book?
You can actually go to my website, rizmirza.com, and you'll see it in the bookstore section of my website.
Okay.
Or you could just go straight to Amazon and get it. I think it's like 220 pages. I put a lot of pictures in the back that I felt demonstrated my experience. Let me see. I'll show you a couple examples. There were some scenes like this. And,
Yes.
it was so good that I was able to actually finally really, really lock in exactly what I saw. But yeah, it's a fun read. I think, it's fun for me anyway. It's a very powerful story of how my alien upgrade changed my life and the people around me, and everything I'm doing down to this very podcast would have never happened if it wasn't actually for that upgrade. And people ask, well, what does that mean, alien upgrade? So basically for me, it just meant I actually physically, literally saw alien beings in my room for 2 days. And I had an alien ethereal surgery where I had an upgrade to my spinal column. And I saw the whole thing happen. It was very dramatic. I spell it out play by play in the book. But what happened afterwards is it changed my personality the very next day. And everybody basically had to get to know a new person. And with that upgrade came new skill sets and new abilities. And I had new downloads. I had an ability to see into the future. I had an ability to read people at a very sensitive level. So a lot of things changed. And it turns out I didn't know if anybody else experienced this because it happened back in 2010. But as more and more people have been coming out and telling their stories, apparently this has been happening. Not only people get taken into ships, but they'll have it in a multidimensional experience, half in their 3D home or place, their car, their bed, their bedroom couch, and then also on a ship of some sort, like you're interdimensional. So this has been happening.
And often, just to include here too, for anyone that didn't hear the first 2 episodes, often the way that people clarify whether or not they had an experience. Gee, I think that I did.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there are what are called usually past life, as in reincarnation, past life regression hypnotists.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them also specialize in previous experiences going up on a ship. It's like, gee, I think that happened. Can you put me under hypnosis and take me onto the ship, and we'll figure out what went on?
Yeah.
So that's something that that Oriah has done.
Yeah.
He went to one of the top regression hypnotists who also does past life regressions, but she also does, and she's done several thousand, I think you said?
Yeah, she's very, very well known. Barbara Lamb.
Okay.
And also Leslie Mitchell Clark was my first hypnotherapist. And because of the upgrade, what was so interesting is I thought I was going to be able to, from a third person, be able to view exactly what happened to me. But what ended up happening is I kept going further than that into other realms and speaking from these other dimensional selves of mine. And it's really fun. But in the last episode, in episode 2, if you go back after the show, you'll see I put the whole hypnotherapy regression session with Barbara Lamb there. You can watch it.
Right. And I think too, it's important to emphasize, as you mentioned, it's happened to a lot of other people.
Yes.
There are plenty of people that have never heard anything like this.
Mm-hmm.
And they think, oh, well, she's just making it up, or this person's making it up, or that, I never heard of this before. Well, there are literally, when you start researching it, and I was fortunate enough to get an advanced copy okay, of
Yes.
Oriah's book.
Yes.
And so I know that she did a tremendous amount of research to verify, are there
Yes.
really a lot of people out there that have experienced this? Yes,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely.
Yeah, and it seems like I'm noticing a trend. It seems like it's happening more and more as we're getting closer and closer, as alien disclosure is starting to unveil itself, and we're starting to get closer and closer to the truth of like what we already know is happening. I feel more
Yes,
and more people are coming forward and they're saying, I don't know where I'm getting this information from, but I feel like I have only one track mind about just evolving humanity, and I can't do anything but help others and any which way that I can in any capacity. And it's like you feel like there's people like you, Dennis, which I can't wait to get into your story, that actually were completely taken into a ship, and I
but
believe
I
what
have no
happened.
recollection of what happened on the ship
Well,
because
which
that's
is very common,
yeah,
but we'll
exactly
go into your story. But it's in those moments when they take you up, they're not taking you up. Some people, yeah, for for nefarious reasons, some of the grays, or some, I guess you would say, the bad aliens will take you up
right.
to take things from you. But in this case, the benevolent ones, when they take us up, they already know, like people who have a gift, like especially people who like to talk, like me and you. So I notice that a lot of people who have a special gift or something to offer, especially people who like to talk, I noticed that they have this story that they have been taken or they had a surgery upgrade, because look what ends up happening is now we're changed forever. And now, and people would say, well, does it mean that aliens are controlling your every move? Well, first of all, we don't know if aliens are controlling anything. We have no actual valid proof of that.
Right, right.
And we don't know, we could be under control, all of us right now. We have no idea. But what I do know is that we're bringing a more elevated, more peaceful conversation to the planet. So it could
Yes,
only be for our highest
yes.
good.
Well, and I think there's something else to emphasize here too is that everybody has some degree of intuition,
Hmm.
at varying degrees. Yeah, I got a friend that has much better intuition than I have, or whatever. But
Hmm.
the point is that I think that if somebody has a negative experience, even though they have no recall, they just wake up and they're very, very uncomfortable, they're going to notice that.
Hmm.
So I think that there are possibly a lot of people that are listening to this right now that have been taken up. They have no recall of it, but because they never had a bad feeling when they woke up, they just woke up and felt normal. There
Hmm.
are probably many people out there that are getting upgrades and
Yeah.
they are completely, unaware of
Right.
it. But their friends might notice, well, gee, I don't know what it is about you, but your personality is a little bit
Yeah.
different. You're talking a little bit different, and they don't really notice because it's subtle for them.
Yes. Well, I'd like to just give the distinction between being awakened and having an upgrade. They're both kind of sound the same and they have some similarities, but there's big differences. So
Yes,
I had an awakening November 2009. And I remember because I didn't sleep for 2 weeks after the awakening. And the awakening was, before the awakening, I was kind of just trudging along with my children, ready. I was facing a divorce and I was going through a lot, and I was just kind of in the mud. And
right,
then I guess it was like I hit my brink, like my breaking point. Enough was enough. And it was like a beam of light or something, just like it was like my mind opened to far more information out there in the 3D world and in the 5D and other dimensions than I was experiencing up until that moment. And it felt like a full, like my whole body became alive, and my face and my aura, everything changed. And I realized the value I possessed. I realized why I was here. I realized that I'm much more meaningful, not just as a mother and a wife, but as a human being. And I had a lot to offer. I felt the call to be a part of the bigger conversation of helping humanity evolve. There was all
sure.
these things that were just automatically organic, and it was like my third eye was open. So that was my spiritual awakening. And then cut to not too much later, almost a year later, in November 2010, when I had this alien etheric upgrade, which I call a light body upgrade, an etheric light body upgrade. And when I had this upgrade, what happened was it wasn't just that I felt those things I just mentioned, but I actually felt that I had been given information that I didn't have before. It was like I had downloads and I was having downloads by the day, by the hour, by the second. It was like I was getting information about life, humanity, creation, the history of of this earth, where we're from, where we're going as a collective mass consciousness. I started to understand creativity at the highest levels, like understanding the layers. And understanding universal codes and creation is a massive, massive thing that's like God level. It's like, how do you even understand it? Well, there's no real understanding something that's so massive and quantum. But what I was understanding was that it was much bigger than anything that we think is going
Right.
on this everyday world, right? And so
Yes.
there's a difference because I changed, my personality changed, my topics of interest changed, how I communicated to others changed, my diction, my the way my voice, my cadence, my personality, my humor, everything changed. And some people call it a walk-in. They think that maybe what happened to me was I had like a walk-in, which was I switched places with another consciousness. Now, could that be possible? It could. But from what I understand and what I feel is that I requested this upgrade because when I got together with my husband, who was already working as a master trance channel, and I was engaged, I didn't have the context or the ability to have these deep conversations with him
Right.
because I didn't have
Okay.
the history and the background and years of experience to be able to talk to him about anything or work in this realm with others and help, coach people to the degree I could. I had like a little coaching business, but it was nothing like what Riz was doing. And I felt
Right.
like my higher self must have called this in and requested this because afterwards, everything that came out of my mouth after that very night, I was able to not only keep up with what he was talking about, but even gave him information that he didn't have.
Right.
And that's when we launched our healing business together.
So your book basically, and just for everybody's edification here, received an advance copy from Oriah, so I read the entire book. Just for everybody that's listening, the book starts out clear back in 2010
Mm-hmm.
with her primary experience in the Paris hotel room because
Mm-hmm.
Oriah and Riz were on a vacation
Mm-hmm.
to Paris, and this is
Mm-hmm.
where the whole thing started. So
Mm-hmm.
this book covers from 2010 all the way up until now
Mm-hmm.
because there's been a constant, additional awareness, I think, by you of additional expanding psychic abilities,
Mm-hmm.
okay, intuitive abilities that are expanding and getting more powerful and having greater depth.
Mm-hmm.
So it's quite a comprehensive book because you're going from 2010 all the way up to 2025.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the book was only published a few days ago, became
Yeah.
available. So
Right.
it's right up to current everything that you're experiencing. So,
Mm.
there's quite a scope of information
Mm-hmm.
that we're trying to touch on, highlights out of the book
Yes.
in this podcast
Yes.
so that you have an overview. But what we always want to reassure you of is that there seem to be many more benevolent onboard
Yes.
experiences, as documented by these regression hypnotists that are taking people back onto the ship.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it was 2 weeks ago or a year ago, they'll usually tell the hypnotist, well, this happened about 8 months ago, actually, but I was finally able to get an appointment with you.
Yeah.
I want to know what happened. Can you see if I actually was taken onto a ship? Because I feel
Right.
kind of different,
Right.
after that experience. And
Well,
there are,
Dennis, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, but I feel that you're not going to have an alien visitation unless your vibration is high enough,
I agree.
honestly. Because
I
if you're
couldn't agree
not,
more.
because otherwise, how else are you going to be able to receive this type of information?
Yes.
I know not everybody had a positive experience, but they're still upgrading the conversation just by talking about the interactions because it's what you do with this information. And I know that some people have had scary experiences like, the hybridization program and they're taking the women's eggs and they're like showing them the babies and maybe that's happened to me. I have no idea. That I don't have any memory
Right.
of that, but the women who do remember, the way it felt, it was leaving a negative impression. And in my case, it was a positive impression. So can they change their mind and find a more positive take? They maybe could if they expand their consciousness all the way out to why this is a good thing for humanity to integrate with higher intelligence, but it's
And
not for me to say.
I agree with you on this, Oriah, because, in some cases, if their first introduction to this kind of information
Mm-hmm.
being taken on board or whatever, for example, was
Mm-hmm.
one of the most famous abduction stories, Travis Walton,
Mm-hmm.
Arizona, okay, and
Mm-hmm.
Paramount made a movie with Chariots of Fire, was it? Or
Fire in the Sky, close.
Fire in the Sky, that's right, Fire in the Sky.
Yeah.
And, I've heard him speak live
Mm-hmm.
about his experience because he was one of the keynote speakers all 7 years in a row that I attended Contact in the Desert,
Mm-hmm.
which is the biggest, 4 to 5 days every single year UFO conference on the planet. And he was there every year. And he said, well, they did over dramatize some of the stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There is some pretty grisly scenes in there when he was on the ship and they were
Mm-hmm.
propping his eyes open and everything. And it was enough to scare somebody. It's like, man, I wouldn't want to go through that. But if that's somebody's only exposure, it's understandable how this would be a fearful potentiality. I don't want to go. So we want to reassure you in this podcast that, and this is just my opinion, but I've listened to a lot of really, really famous, many of the keynote speakers, just for you folks' edification, at Contact in the Desert, were many of the keynote speakers that you see on Ancient Aliens. If you've been watching Ancient Aliens, it's been around for many, many years. And, the stories that they tell from people that they've interviewed in order to be able to write their books and everything, or more often than not, positive experiences.
Yeah.
Or perhaps puzzling experiences, but it wasn't fearful for them.
Yes.
So I think that we need to, emphasize that it's nothing to be afraid of.
Yes.
And if you invite the good ETs, then that's who will visit you. Right?
That's true. I mean, your interest has to be elevated as it is to be it's like your focus, instead of looking at what's wrong with everything, you have to look at the environment as we're changing it to evolve into a higher plane. You're having to look at the idea that maybe as a mass consciousness, we're going into a quantum leap. Maybe we're all trying to go to this next level. And so it's going to look messy before it's straightened out. And I feel like this is the part where it's like the biggest growing pains of humanity we've had to date, I think, just in technology and in every other way that we're wanting, we're all wanting, the idea of quantum mechanics and quantum physics is, like if you have a quantum leap, so let's just take like an insect or a plant, when there's enough inertia, like pressure, and there's enough power and enough pressure behind the thing. It could be a leaf, a bud, it could be an exoskeleton. What happens is there's enough of a punch, enough of a power punch that breaks through and becomes a completely and totally different entity. It's like a huge transformation takes place where it's unrecognizable from the beginning thing. So like a little rosebud looks nothing like the end result, and many bugs don't look the same from beginning to end. And so I think as we go along, as Seth has spoken about so eloquently through Jane Roberts and channeled, which I adore everything they do, they talk about this mass consciousness. And I think as a mass consciousness, we're all gearing up, and there's a pressure that we're all building, and we're pulling our future towards us, and we're pushing away from our past. And there is a pressure buildup, and there's going to be a pop out, and we're going to pop through to the other side. And that's when the majority of people are going to demand and want to go into more evolved consciousness and less of the violence and the primary kind of, caveman type of communication and behavior. And who knows, maybe cavemen were a little bit more sophisticated than we've been acting. So, but that's what quantum leaping really is.
Well, and two, I just want to interject here. When we use the word quantum, I think that kind of scares a lot of people. Oh, quantum physics, boy, that's way over my head. Don't even try to talk to me about that. But, when you boil it down to, what is a quantum particle, which are just little balls of energy, just like atoms are little balls of energy. There's no real mass there per se, electrons, protons, and neutrons. But quantum particles are a lot smaller. So everything has quantum attributes in that There is not one substance or physical item that you can think of, whether it's your physical body or the cells in your body or your car or your cell phone or whatever. Everything is made up of quantum particles.
Yeah.
And there's no place in the universe, there's no place between you and I right now, Oriah, where there is a blank area where there are no quantum particles.
That's so true. Even
Between
where
you and
there's
I right
nothing.
now, it is solid quantum particles. And everybody that we're talking to right now,
Yes.
you're listening to this, guess what?
Yeah.
There's no empty area halfway
No.
in between us. Yeah, there's about 3 miles. You know,
Yeah.
I'm listening from Ireland, and there's, you know, we're how many thousands of miles away? Guess what? It's solid quantum particles between us and those of you that may be listening in Ireland right now. And I'm in Las Vegas, Nevada, and Oriah is in Malibu, California.
Did you see that Instagram post that I sent you yesterday about the quantum particles that are shared, but they still experience each other in instant time? It doesn't matter how far away they are from each other.
Yes.
So to me, that's the psychic realm.
Oh,
So
yeah.
we're instantaneously feeling each other at one time, even if you're going through like a media source, like a television or a camera or a phone. But there's also the psychic quantum realm, which is your telepathic realms where you can feel. And if you're sensitive enough, you could actually, and trust yourself enough, you can feel what's actually happening in your household, in the neighbor's household, in the neighborhood, in the city, in the state, country, and the world. And in pockets, you can concentrate and focus. Like people, when they do remote viewing, they focus and concentrate on one area. And so that's the same when you're going into telepathic communication with groups of people, which is what I do all the time. And so I can go into group consciousness and understand what is the ebb and flow, what is the higher purpose, what's the primal purpose, what are they trying to accomplish as a soul, as a race, as a society, as a culture.
When you're doing that, it is a quantum communication, as a matter of fact.
It is. And it's not easy. It's not something that is just casual. You have to very much, it's like deep meditative focus, and you have to really go in and really go through the layers, because we're very complex, us human beings and us creators of ourselves. We are very complex, layered beings. And we have many layers and layers and layers of why we do what we do. It's not just instant reaction why you do things. There's also your higher self, higher purpose, your instructions to go out into the world. It's your subconscious mind giving you information going through. It's multidimensional selves all communicating through you at once. There's so many layers to what makes up a human being.
Well, and in the regression hypnosis that you went through, to revisit your alien experience, that is your subconscious mind that the hypnotist is communicating with, because everything is recorded there. Your conscious mind, when you were having the experience, didn't make a recording, you might say, but your subconscious mind saw and experienced everything.
Yeah.
So, and again, that's quantum energy. I mean, you know, people say, well, I don't believe in God because I don't believe in anything that's invisible. Well, that's interesting because, let's see, when you talk to somebody on your cell phone, how do you explain, how is your voice carrying across many, many miles instantaneously? There's no delay. It's instant. So really, it's in some ways faster than the speed of light.
Yeah.
So how do we explain that? Well, that's it. Well, you believe in your cell phone. Well, I don't believe in anything that's invisible. Well, then you can't believe in your cell phone, because that is technically invisible communications.
And your microwave.
Yes. Yeah. Microwave satellite dish all works off microwaves. How does that satellite that's 23,000 miles out in the sky, maybe you got a DirecTV dish or a Dish Network dish or whatever, how does it send crystal clear 4K high definition pictures and sound to your television? A little dish sitting on your roof. How does that work? It's kind of mysterious. And you know, I know we've talked about bringing time travel and stuff into this. Well, you have to ask yourself, let's say you're watching an old black and white series of, you know, whatever, an old Rifleman series or whatever, an old black and white TV show that was recorded back in 1950s. Aren't you, in a way, time traveling when you're watching what was
true? That's true. Yeah, because everything is infused, right? So everything has intention, everything has energy. We have studied and talked about, I think it is his name, I can't think of his name, but it was a scientist or a physicist who kind of watched the way sound manipulates and creates patterns in water.
Which is cymatics.
Cymatics, right? But I can't remember the name of the doctor that wrote that book. And he said that the water didn't like the sound of rock and roll, but it liked the sound of classical music or things like that.
Masaru Emoto.
Yes. And
Masaru Emoto. Yep.
then we found out that it's the intention of the observer. Talk about going quantum. The observer was that physicist
Yes.
who was observing and had his formed opinions manipulated the outcome of how sound was projected into the water, creating patterns based on his thinking and intentions.
Right. And how the water picked up the vibration of words, because if you recall, part of his process was he'd write a word like "I hate you" or a little phrase,
right.
"I hate you," onto a piece of paper, and they put water into a glass and freeze it. And then they would look at those ice particles, which in a manner of speaking is like looking at snowflakes, and they would be really ugly and all grotesque.
Yeah.
And then when they would write on the piece of paper, "I love you," and freeze those particles, then those little snowflakes were absolutely perfect and symmetric, what so-called sacred geometry patterns.
Right.
Every single time. If they took contaminated water out of a contaminated lake and didn't write any words at all and froze it and looked at it, that contaminated water would have produced ugly patterns.
Yeah.
Ice crystals that they'd look at. And then they would go to some pristine lake up in the mountains somewhere, like Tahoe, in Northern California, for example, northern Nevada here, and pristine, clean water. And guess what? The crystals produce beautiful patterns. So how do we explain that? Something is going on there with the quantum energy of the physical substances.
Well, I want to talk a little bit more about the sound.
Go.
So sound is invisible. Sound is invisible technically, right? Now, the medium of water, we're able to see how sound manipulates that material of water. Now, imagine, take the water away. Now you have the material of air.
Yes.
So it as well is manipulating the air molecules as it travels. So the thing is, sound itself is quantum in the sense that it has its own sacred geometry, its own patterns. So it comes in with its own programming. So everything in your life, and I'm glad you brought this up, everything in your life, of those of you who are watching, is you're operating already from the quantum realm. You don't even realize it. You're taking it for granted. There's quantum mechanics happening around you everywhere.
Because you're broadcasting a frequency all the time.
Yes. And people who are telepathic and sensitive can hear you, by the way. Did you know that?
Yes.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? A lot of people don't realize that.
For anybody that might not be familiar with the term cymatics, it's spelled CYMATICS. And the most common demonstration you'll see if you look up, documentary YouTube videos is they'll take a steel plate that's not very thick, it's not floppy, but it's stiff, and they'll put a speaker underneath it. And then they'll hook up a frequency generator. And you can sprinkle onto that metal plate. You can use any kind of a dry substance, sand, rice, or whatever, and turn that frequency generator to 967 hertz, let's say. And as the plate is vibrating, the sand or the rice will go into a very specific pattern.
I've seen that.
322 hertz, completely different pattern. Well, let's go back to 967 hertz. Oh, it's the same exact pattern. Whether we use rice or sand, that frequency produces that specific pattern. And I've even seen, Oriah, this was really interesting. They'll take a tub of water, about, yay deep, and put the same speaker underneath it, same frequency, and the water will vibrate in the same pattern as the dry substance would at the same frequency. So the same frequency will produce the same pattern, whether you're using a dry substance on a metal plate or if you're using water. Well, what does that tell you?
That tells me everything is frequency.
Exactly.
So that means our thoughts are sending out signals and frequency. So if we are coming from fear, you're sending out a distorted frequency.
And if it wasn't frequency, when somebody is angry with you and yelling at you, it would not affect your emotions at all. Or when somebody that is an intimate partner says, you know what, I really, really love you. Well, that's a frequency that they're emitting,
Mm-hmm.
broadcasting with their words, but also with their intention, because every word that we speak is wrapped in an emotional envelope, right?
But we could receive it or reject it.
Exactly.
Same with fear and same with
Exactly.
anger. Yeah.
But words do create emotions
Yes.
in everyone. You know,
Yeah.
when you're a receiver of words,
Your
it
thoughts
does
create.
create some sort of
Yes.
an emotion because it's either good or bad or indifferent or whatever, but it's some sort of an emotion. And what is an emotion? A vibrational frequency.
Yep. It's like a little envelope, a little package, and you send it
Yeah.
out into the world and
Yeah.
create your reality that way.
It really makes you examine your reality and be careful about the words that you use with everybody that you encounter
Well,
because your
Dennis,
words
you know,
will affect them.
you have a lot of information. That's why we became friends 10 years ago or longer, actually, what,
Yes.
14 years ago?
Yeah.
Because you have the same information that I do, and
Yes.
I don't find that coincidental. So that's why I'd like you to be here on the show, because you have the same information. So that tells me that your alien experiences were actually upgrades as well. So would you be, are you ready to jump into your experiences?
Well, do you want to go just a little bit? Because I have the questions I have
Okay.
prepared
Ask
here
me
for
a
you.
couple questions from my previous two shows, and then we'll jump
Okay,
over
yeah,
to
let's
your
let's do
side.
that just for the continuity because we've been off track a
Sure.
little bit. I mean, it's been fun and interesting. At least
Yeah.
I hope you all that are listening have found this interesting. Between the two of us, what we try to do is to bring clarity to things like frequencies and vibration and
Yes.
cymatics, explain it in such a way, and usually between the two of us, we can, so that you begin to grasp enough to where you're going, you know what?
Yep.
That's really intriguing. And I'm going to research that on my own because I'm
Yes.
still a little bit uncertain. And we
Mhm.
encourage you to do that. Anything that
Mhm.
you say that you're questioning the veracity of what we're saying, investigate it yourself. And usually I think what you'll find is you'll be very surprised and going, oh my gosh, there's way more here than what they just talked about.
Right.
So where I want to go here next is one of the things early on in the book that you discuss
Mhm.
is, and you came up with this term, and it's a wonderful term. You abbreviate it to ILU, but ILU stands for interdimensional light body upgrade,
Mhm.
which is how you describe your experience in your book. So
Yes.
could you go into a little more detail on that and how you came up with that term, why you came up with that term, and how it's affected your life between 2010 when that upgrade took place and all the way up until now?
Yes, of course. So, since everything is vibration, like we were talking about, and everything is frequency, and everything's coded and symbols and symmetry, and there's sacred geometry and there's programming. If you're coming from that frame of thinking, then you can understand that having this upgrade was from an actual event that took place that was technically like an etheric surgery. So it felt like I've had one part of my body removed and replaced with a more high functioning part of my body, which was my spine. And I saw them put it in like through the top of my head when I was leaning back. I saw the blue rod going in,
Yep.
but it was etheric. So etheric means obviously it's not in the physical 3D form. And then people will say, well, how do you know you weren't hallucinating or you weren't dreaming? And the reason why is because the very next day, and it was very traumatic, by the way, at the time, because it was very
I remember.
physically
Yes.
intense. But the next day, I was not myself, and I was never myself again. I had never ever returned back to that. I've had, because I'm in menopause, I've had a lot of like tests done,
Right.
and scans and all
Sure.
sorts of, I think, CT scans or whatever they're called, like just all this like brain scanning and like physical body scanning just to check everything, and everything's normal. I don't have
Yeah.
any anomalies. I don't have any brain health issues or like concussions or any I'm not diagnosed with anything. I don't have any bipolar or any kind of, I'm not on any medications. I wasn't on any pharmaceuticals or drugs or anything. This was just a natural occurrence that happened with, extraterrestrial beings in a multidimensional way. And I just became a completely new individual with new feelings and emotions. And I didn't have the same old feelings and emotions that I used to have. I was able to recall them and pull them into my memory, but I had no association to them all the way. I did have a connection, understanding my children, that there was a connection. And my husband, at the time, my fiance, Riz, there was a connection. I felt that intimate connection because it was very powerful within my being. So when I stepped in or I upgraded, however you want to say it, I felt this already was there, hardwired. But it took me many, many, many years to be able to reconnect to the old me and find out who she was and find out what there was a lot of her that was not high vibrational enough for me to even be interested. It's kind of like I was picking and choosing what I wanted to experience through her memory bank and
Right.
her stories. And there was so much I discarded because there were so many things that I had no use for. I'll give you an example. I grew up in the inner city. So my body grew up in the inner city, and I had a lot of traumatic and bad experiences and memories from some of the incidences that had happened, which
Okay.
shaped my personality. And I
Right.
was very hard edged and very rough around the corners and hard to talk to and very defensive. And I had like a very street kind of mentality. Like the way I spoke was like, I would never be able to have this conversation like this. We would never
Right.
even be friends, Dennis, because you couldn't even really talk to me all the way. I would
Yeah.
just be always looking for the angle. And I was just didn't trust anybody. And um, the person that I am today overnight is night and day from that person. So, as a matter of fact, my only issue I faced in this upgrade was that I was a little bit too trusting and too open, and it was actually too much the other direction. And I had to
Right.
learn a lot of things, like kind of like a newbie, and had to learn about, oh, okay, you should read between the lines and be more nuanced. That took me years to figure out the nuances and the humor and all these different things that came with the upgrade. But this is all in the book and also in the second episode if you guys want to go back and review that. But
And
thank
when
you for
Oriah
asking that.
when Oriah speaks of personality change, I think that's something else that some people have a tough time believing. You
Yeah.
know, yeah, right, personality change. But
Yeah.
you just mentioned your children.
Mhm.
If you could just recount quickly what your daughter said in the car to you,
Yeah,
because they
she was
sensed the
very young.
personality change, didn't they?
Oh, absolutely. Right away. They knew something was different and I wasn't acting the same. And my daughter, who's more on the psychic side, she was young at the time and she looked at me and she goes, "Mommy, you're acting like an alien." So I was like, well,
Wow.
there you go. That
Out of
was
the
within like
blue.
less than 10 minutes of seeing me after I hadn't seen her for a couple of weeks while I was integrating.
Right.
Um, yeah.
And it's important, I think, everybody understand your children were not along on that vacation to Paris.
No, it was
So,
just me
so there
me
was
and
a
Riz,
gap
yeah.
of time between when it occurred in Paris
Yes, and
and
when
when
they
you
saw me
finally saw
last.
your children again. It's like, hey,
Yes.
wait a minute.
Yep.
This isn't the mom that flew to Paris
Right.
when she left.
Yeah.
You're different. Is there somebody
It's
else in
taken
there?
all these years to get you for them to get used to me, and they're still never going to be fully used to me. I have 5 children. I haven't like some of them understand the story, some of them get it like, "Okay, mom. Okay, I'm glad you had your alien experience. That's great."
Well,
Because my
since
kids
this
are
upgrade,
my kids are from 19 years old to 33.
right?
So, they went through their teens and there's a part of them that just doesn't care. There's a part of them that gets it, like, "Oh, okay, that's what happened. That was your experience."
Yeah.
And other kids don't believe it or know why I'm like this and then they also don't understand why, like, they think what happened to me was I got very interested in a style of living, like a lifestyle or communication style. But what I tried to explain to them is I had no reference to this lifestyle prior to this. I had no information. I didn't have backlogs of data of books and tapes and catalogs and things I've read and watched and been to give me information about quantum field, about alien technology, about interdimensional communication, telepathy, like all these things I was experiencing and doing and still do. I had no prior background to that. So when they think it's just that, oh, you just got really into it. How do I get really into something and overnight? Like
Yeah,
that's impossible.
exactly.
So, you know, I mean, I think it's going to take some time. Maybe years and years are going to have to go by of more information and more life experience on their part. And maybe they have to see more to really understand that this actually happened, because it's so hard to believe when it's a person closest to you.
Yes, yes. But those are going to be always the first ones to notice. They're
Yes,
either going
that's
to be
right.
family members or maybe people that
Yeah.
you work with on a regular basis.
Mhm.
It's like, hey, George is really different. What happened to him? And
Yeah,
everybody's talking about George's changes behind his back,
right.
and George may not even recognize it.
Yeah. There's a lot of people out there that have had upgrades and they don't even know because their memory was wiped, or like I, for whatever reason, I wanted to like witness and be a part of it and watch. And
Right.
like, of course, I'm not surprised. That is my, the current personality is very curious being. So like, I like to watch and learn, but, yeah, I don't think not everybody remembers. And sometimes you go through past life regression and you can remember that way.
Right. Right. So to proceed here and kind of keep us on track with moving along from episode 1 and 2, your unique cosmic blueprint that you mentioned in the book,
Uh-huh.
including your 563 numerological code and your Pleiadian alignment. How do you understand your pre-incarnation agreements? Because you do talk about that. You Before you incarnated, you agreed to go through these changes at a particular time on this timeline. And you discussed the timing factor before too. They're very specific with you sometimes. So, and include in that the concept of being a so-called seeded being
Yes.
onto this planet, onto this timeline, in order to help with exactly what you were talking about earlier, with the escalation of consciousness, so that we can all go through a benevolent shift and rise above all of the negativity that we're all observing right now, if you're unfortunate enough to tune into the news.
Right.
So you're
Well,
a seated being, and let's
yes.
go from there.
Well, I think that if anything like this has ever happened to you, including an awakening, I think it's important that you do a lot of research in your numerology and your birth sign and all the symbology of like your ley lines and how that corresponds, and which is your sun placement, like your birth sign. So, like in my case, is a Taurus.
Right,
And then where does that align with what constellation? And then do the math. When you start to do the mapping, and you can get somebody to do that for you, and you can get ChatGPT to do that for you, make some mistakes sometimes. You have to be careful.
right.
But what you're going to find out is there's patterns and there's no accidents. So I knew that I felt that I was Palladian. I always felt that I had that incarnation. And also in the Barbara Lamb regression, turns out I'm also Arcturian. But the
Yes,
Palladian side of me is in the constellation of Taurus. And there's many, many other factors that went into kind of like proving to me, in case I ever doubt, that this was predestined. So on top of that, like where the city I was born and what ley line that was, and what my birth chart, how that aligns to those ley lines. And I started seeing that, like, oh, I came here to experience this. This was a destined plan, and I came with the intention of moving the conversation forward, helping people individually in group consciousness to help them to expand their own consciousness so that they can have a better experience and have more fun in their creation, basically. So I I really truly believe in doing this type of chart work, and I think everybody should. And in the back of my book, I have in the last chapter, I put it all here. And the reason I did it, it wasn't just for you to see like confirmation for what I believe, but it's also to show others, like if they ever want to do it, they could follow along and find out all their different ley lines and all their patterns, especially
yes.
with the placements that you have. So anyway, yeah, that's why it's so important.
And a fast track way to do that,
Yes.
if you find a really, really good astrological reader that can do your chart
Yes.
accurately and in depth. And I'm going to take a liberty here and give a plug to your dear friend,
Yes.
one of Oriah's dearest friends. Her name is Erica Merriweather.
Yes.
Erica is absolutely superb at doing charts. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're interested in exploring that, what Oriah is just talking
Yeah,
to
you can
you
find her on my
about,
website. I just actually put her up on my website for the
there you
first
go.
time in all
There
these
you
years.
go.
And so if you go to rizmirza.com, RIZMIRZA.com, you will see their astrology. If you click that link, it'll take you to her page. She's starpathastrology.com. But thank you, Dennis, for including her. Yeah, she is
Well, yeah,
actually
because
really, really good.
I think that if somebody's never done something like that before,
Yeah,
they're
it's a
saying
good
to
place to
themselves,
start.
"Well, gee, it'd be nice to get a referral. How do I know
Yeah,
one from another? Who's good and who's
that's
bad?
true.
Everybody says I'm good, right? But we both know that Erica is superb. So I
Yes.
just wanted to throw that in there because
Thank you.
it's important to seek out when you first enter in these types of arenas.
Yes.
Seek out the best people that you can find and use your intuition somewhat, but it's always nice to get a referral. So
Thank
I'm
you.
happy to do that for
And
Erica.
it's true. It's true. They
Yes,
should do that. Well,
yes.
Dennis, I'm ready to jump into your story. I'm very,
Okay,
very
well,
excited. I've been
shoot away.
waiting and waiting.
Where do you want to start? Because
Yeah,
there's a
there's a
lot there.
lot.
We'll only be
There's a
able to
lot.
touch on a little bit of it today. We're a ways through our.
All right. Well, I'm going to see how many questions I get in. I may only be able to get into 2 questions, but let's see. I'm
That's
going to
okay.
start everybody off with some of the most kind of dramatic starting point, I believe. And correct
Okay.
me, maybe I'm wrong, but I think it is the most dramatic. So in 1976, your profound interest in the cosmos was ignited by your first sighting of 3 UAPs over Mount Hakumba. Can you describe that pivotal moment? What was the immediate impact on you, and how did it influence your trajectory of research?
Well, a buddy of mine and I, Mount Hakumba, I mean, most people in California don't even know where it is,
Right.
but it's a 6,900 foot peak, 6,900 feet tall, and it's a tough rock climb. I mean,
Wow.
normally at that elevation, further north, like up in the redwoods of California and all, it's all pine trees. Well, up on there's not one tree as you're hiking up to the top of Mount Hakumba, and it's right down by the Mexican border. So when
Mm-hmm.
you're up there, and I've hiked to the top of that thing several times with a particular friend of mine, you can see way down into Mexico, you can see way over into Arizona, and if you're looking back north up into California,
Mm-hmm.
there's a gunnery range where they do test bombing and all, military base, and it's called the Chocolate Mountains.
Mm.
So it was very, very, and we usually get up there like in late afternoon. Well, it's too late. It's too dangerous. You can't hike back down at night. So you
Right.
got to sleep up on the top. And this particular night, man, oh man, it was cold and windy. So happen to be looking north towards Mount Hakum. I'm sorry, towards the Chocolate Mountains.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden we see these 3 or 4 kind of saucer shaped lights. Some of them were perfectly round, doing loop-de-loops across the top
And
of
you
the
both
chocolate.
saw it? You both
We
saw it
both
at the
saw
same
it,
time?
yeah.
Mm.
I said, Jim, look at that. There ain't no helicopter that can do that. There's no airplane. An airplane can't have its headlights pointed
Right.
at you and then do loop-de-loops sideways.
Right.
They can only fly forward. They can't even fly backward.
Right.
So we knew that it wasn't, and it wasn't military flares. Flares can't do loop-de-loops right along the top edge of the Chocolate Mountains because the ridge for the Chocolate Mountains runs kind of east and west. We're looking
Mm.
north, so we're looking something that's going across the edge of those mountains. And we probably watched them for about, I don't know, that went on for about a half hour or 45 minutes. So it was not a momentary sighting. And of course, it was all we could talk about for days. It's like, oh my gosh, we know what we saw. We know it was no conventional aircraft.
Well, I feel like they were aware of you
Yes.
because they were like almost showing off in a way.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's something that I believe for
Now,
years.
was that your first sighting?
Let's see. Yes, that was my first sighting.
So
Now
that was like a
I had a missing time. I had a missing time on board experience prior to that in about,
Okay, so please share because it could be the same ship.
could have been.
Can you please share that story?
Sure. In 1974, this would have been that occurrence. And at the time, I was an independent agent booking rock and roll bands in nightclubs all over Southern California, particularly in the beach cities like Huntington Beach and Newport Beach and Corona del Mar and Laguna Beach and all. I had really great nightclubs, and I was a booking agent for top 40 rock and roll bands. So
Mhm.
I was generally out, 5, 6 nights a week. My evening would start at about 8 or 8:30 because the first set that a band would play would start at 9 o'clock, and they'd play till 2 a.m. until the nightclubs closed in
Mhm.
California. It wasn't like where they're all open all night long here in Vegas.
Mhm.
So I was usually going home after 2 a.m. When there'd be like very few people out, especially on a weeknight.
Right.
Tuesday, Wednesday night, people got to go to work in the morning. Who's out at 2 o'clock in the morning?
Mm.
So I remember getting onto the Newport Freeway. I was at a nightclub called Ichabod's in Anaheim.
Mhm.
On my way home, I lived down near the beach in Costa Mesa, and I remember, and I had a nice little '69 Corvette at the time, nice fun little hot rod. So I remember getting onto the freeway, and I remember one of the things that was peculiar that other people have reported that have had onboard experiences and then a missing time experience is
Mhm.
that I'm looking around and there's not, and even back at that time, the Newport Freeway was 4 lanes each way.
Mhm.
Okay, even in the mid 70s, it was 4. It was Southern California, right? 4 lanes each way. And there was nobody. I looked in my rearview mirror. There's nobody behind me, nobody ahead of me. I couldn't see anybody on the other side. The guardrail was only maybe 3 feet tall. So I could see on the other side. And I thought, well, this is really weird. I mean, I know it's like 2:15, 2:30 in the morning,
Wow.
but there should be somebody
The
else
prime time.
on the road.
Yeah.
Yes. So um, all of a sudden I woke up. Now, normally I would go all the way. I was going towards the beach from Anaheim on the Newport Freeway. And
Mhm.
maybe that would be about a half-hour drive,
Mhm.
something like that. But I never got off the Newport Freeway until I got off just near my home. So when I woke up, shall we say, I was
Mhm.
going north on the 405 freeway, which means I would have had to have taken the freeway off ramp off of the Newport Freeway to get onto the 405 freeway right there at Costa Mesa. And all of a sudden, I did a double take. I looked up and there was a 7th Street off ramp for Long Beach, California, which is LA County. And I went, well, wait a minute. I just got onto the Newport Freeway in Anaheim.
Oh my God.
How can, and it seemed like only seconds had gone by. Well, I ended up, when I looked at what time it was, I had lost an hour and a half.
Wow.
I had lost an hour, and I have no memory whatsoever to this day. Even back then, I recognized what had happened,
Mhm.
but it wasn't scary because it wasn't like I woke up with some sort of, oh my gosh, I'm spooked now. What happened? It was just like, wow, that's kind of cool. I wonder what happened. You know,
Yeah.
I must have gotten taken on board. Well, I can't remember it, but that must have been what happened, right?
Right.
So the onboard experiences that I have had, and I've had a few others, I have no recollection of what happened, but I definitely had missing time experiences, which
Well,
is rampantly reported by other people out there. Missing time experience.
right. And they normally, if it happens to you once, it's definitely going to be happening to you multiple times for multiple
Yes,
reasons.
yes,
Yeah, it's not usually a
exactly.
one-time thing.
Well, and many
It's usually
people,
a
it doesn't
lifetime.
necessarily have to be in your car. And apparently, too, one other thing I'll add in here, because I had subsequent psychic readings to find out what really happened.
Mhm.
And and for that experience in 1974, they said, "Oh, they dropped you off way far away from where you would have gone home and gotten off the freeway so that you would recognize that something had happened."
Oh.
They did that on purpose just to mess with you, Dennis.
Wow.
Kind of like from a perspective, a sense of humor. Hey, we don't want him to we don't want to let him off at his normal off ramp.
Wow.
Let's take him way up north on the 405 freeway, San
Wow.
Diego freeway, and drop him off in Long Beach. And
Yeah.
then he'll go, holy Toledo,
That is
what's going on? How did
crazy.
I end up in Long Beach?
Now, did these two instances change you in any way, or did you feel you were already inclined towards alien phenomenon?
Well, it seems like my interest in everything metaphysical shifted even faster, because it was also in 1974 that I was raised a conventional Protestant Christian, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I was also, during that time, because go to Sunday school every Sunday. Sometimes I'd sit in church with my parents, but most of the time I went to Sunday school. And I was always the black sheep in Sunday school, because I had a real knack for asking the Sunday school teacher questions that they could not answer.
You're technically now called the rainbow sheep.
Right. And so, I would
I
always
did the same thing in Sunday school. I asked those questions you're not supposed to ask.
And I actually kind of savored it and loved it when the common response was, well, Dennis,
yeah,
that's one of God's mysteries, and nobody knows the answer to that question. And I'm thinking to myself, hey, I'm only 10 years old. How can I ask a question that's one of God's mysteries that this Sunday school teacher that's supposed to be educating me can't even answer, won't even attempt to answer? So I always had because sometimes things just didn't make sense to me.
Right. So your mind has always been like one part here in the 3D and the other part in the multidimensional quantum.
In fact, speaking of leaving your body and leaving the house where I grew up, which was in LA County, same county where you grew up, interestingly enough, not too far away in Whittier. I can remember when I was only 6 or 7 years old, my bedroom was at the front of the house, and there was a tall street lamp right in front of our house. And I can remember to this day, and I never mentioned this to my parents because I figured they'd think I was crazy, but many, many times where I would go out of my body and fly through my bedroom window. Now, the window was closed, but I would dematerialize through the window, and I can remember flying up, and I'd be looking down at the street lamp, and it would get further and further below me. And then when it was almost out of sight, I'd lose memory of where I went after that. So I don't know.
And then you just wake up in your body.
Yeah, I don't know where I was going. I didn't try to make
now,
anything
can I ask you a few questions about that incident?
Sure.
Did you feel any temperature, like weather?
No.
Okay. So I believe you were astral traveling.
Yes. And because I didn't feel, it wouldn't have mattered whether it was hot or cold outside, whether it was 90 degrees in the summer or or cold in the wintertime. I felt no temperature when I was out of my body. And I can remember sometimes when I would come back to my body, similar to you having a difficult time lifting your body up out of the bed.
Yes.
Paris.
Yes.
I remember when I was a little kid, it was like my body was cement, and I wanted to sit up in bed and wonder about what just happened. But I felt like I was, cement.
Well, I have an idea for you.
I could not sit up. I could not move my body. Couldn't move a finger.
I have an idea of what possibly could have happened.
Yes.
I think you went up into a ship.
Okay.
I think that's what you were doing. And you, being the curious mind that you are, and you know how to astral travel. And the reason you would blank out is you probably went onto a ship and then you had your memory erased, because that used to happen to me when I was a kid. And I had apparently, in one of my past life regressions, I actually saw a mothership above one of my houses when I was in the 4th grade. And that memory was wiped out, but it came up in the hypnotherapy session. And I had been aboard a ship many, many times when I was a kid, which makes total sense to me.
This is an interesting direction to go into, Oriah, because, when we talk about reincarnation, for example, and you and I have had this conversation many times, the word reincarnation automatically implies linearity, one lifetime after another. But when you go down into the quantum realm, and you can talk to any top quantum physicist at Harvard, Yale, Princeton, wherever, and they'll tell you, well, yeah, at the quantum level, there is no time or space. It's kind of hard to understand, but that's as PhD scientists at these top, that's what's going on in the quantum realm.
Right.
So you have to realize, okay, well, if we step out of the linearity into the quantum realm, then that means you're living multiple lifetimes on multiple linear timelines simultaneously, as well as in other dimensions. So what if your Pleiadian self right now is looking down and saying, look, there's my physical incarnation,
Mm-hmm.
one of many, named Oriah, and she's doing a podcast with Dennis right now.
Yeah, I definitely think I come in and out, like blipping in and out. So I
Yes,
think I blip in for certain things. And then sometimes I feel like parts of my old personality that was reconstructed or reconnected comes through and kind of holds the ship and keeps my body just like activated and animated
yes,
during kind of times that are not important. And
yes,
then I come back, I reanimate when necessary. So
yep,
whenever I'm activating my other selves, like right now, I get fully engaged for the conversation, but it's like having it's like having a Lamborghini engine and I put it in different cars because it
right,
doesn't make sense to always have it revving in a car that's not doing what it's not
yeah,
needing it. I guess
right.
I don't even know if that's a good analogy. I bet there's a better analogy than that.
That's okay.
But that's kind of what it feels like. It's like when I'm not needed or it's not that kind of heavy conversation where I need this many layers of information, I kind of go somewhere else. Like in my consciousness, I revert back into like another a part of me. It's almost like sleepwalking or dreamscape. And then there's another version of me that is hanging out with the family or cooking dinner and
Right,
whatever. And I don't need to use that heavy, loaded, heavy caliber of data
right.
system, you know? But, one of the things I really appreciate about you, Dennis, that I have, and I've mentioned it so many times, is I don't take it for granted at all, is I have talked to thousands and thousands of people at this point, in person and online. And it's
Yes,
very rare will you come across another person who has the same amount of downloads and the same information. And that's when we probably signed up for this at the same time. Like we are on the same frequency. So that's why our conversations are so fluid
well,
and we
and we,
understand the same concepts.
yes, it's kind of an interesting concept to peruse.
Hmm.
We may be Pleiadian pals on a orbiting ship right now,
Yeah.
looking at our physical bodies and going, hey, those upgrades we've been doing for the physical version
Yes.
of ourselves
Yes.
has really been helping, and it's accomplishing our mission of trying to help people to elevate their consciousness.
Yep.
And the analogy that I like to look at sometimes when people say, well, you talk about time travel and other dimensions and everything, but look at the um, technological advances
Hmm.
that we have done here in this country and around the planet, but let's just talk about the United States, since we were riding on horses in the Old West.
I know. I think about that every day
And
because
so,
we blew past in the last 100, 200 years. Look how much our technology has
I like to say
sped
to
up.
people, when you look at, yeah, the technology advances since we were on horseback in the Old West in a previous linear lifetime,
Hmm.
timeline, so to say. Well, what was going on from the time of Jesus up until the Old West in the
It was
Western
very
United
slow.
States? Were all those people just like really stupid or what?
Yeah, it just moved
I mean, that
very
was a period
slow.
of 2,000 years. Look what we've done in 250 years.
Right. Well, I'm going to blow your mind even more about what I'm going to say now. And then I think this is a great jump off point where we could wrap up our show and then see everybody next time. But
Okay.
let me tell you this observation I've been having. So,
Yes.
ever since, obviously the cell phone and media and computers and technology, everything has been speeding up I think at this point, we all agree time has shifted and changed as a
Yeah.
collective. We have all adjusted ourselves to this new way of communication where we are communicating very closely with technology. And it has forced us to speed up pretty much every area of our life, even though you can unplug, go to the park or unplug and put your phone aside for 3 days. And even though you get to do those things, the overall conversation internally, the subconscious mind has changed so much. I'll give you an example of something that we've noticed. Now,
Yes.
in the 70s and 80s and 90s,
Okay.
if you didn't see somebody or visited them in person, but just once a year, that was a really big deal if they were your friend or family member.
Yes.
And if they came to see you, it would be like, oh my God, it's been a year.
Yeah.
I can't believe you're here and you're visiting me. Let's put out the red carpet. Oh my gosh, this is a
Yeah.
big deal. We haven't seen each other in forever. Nowadays, a year goes by, it's like 6 months went by.
I
And
know.
now when you see each other once a year, that's like, "Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. I didn't see you until" what was like last year, like summer of last year? Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Like, not a big deal at all. It's like now time has shifted so much that what a year would be or 6 months would be doesn't hold the same weight. Now if you say 6 months, you're like, "Oh my god, 6 months, that's gonna go by fast." We never used to say that. We used to
So
say 6
and
months, that's gonna take forever.
when they left their home to come and visit you, let's say you have relatives that come down from Canada.
Right.
They walked out their front door at a particular time.
Mhm.
Maybe they choose to drive all the way down to Malibu and visit you.
Mm.
Well, now they're standing in front of you at a different time. Did they just time travel?
Mhm.
Well, it's a different time.
Yeah, because they're in a different time zone. So what time zone are they in?
Yeah.
They're in what we call the now zone.
Yeah.
They're in the
It's, it's,
present. Well,
it's
because
already
the
tomorrow.
time is a man-made construct, as you
It is.
know.
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, if you dialed up a friend in Australia right now, it's tomorrow.
Yeah.
So when you're talking to somebody that's where it's already tomorrow, are you time traveling?
Well, you know, one of my
Are they
predictions
going back
is
in time when they talk to you? Or are you going forward in time as you're talking to them? Because it
that's
really
right.
is tomorrow in Australia. And people don't think of it usually in those terms, but it's pretty mind boggling when you think about it.
I think in the next 10 to 20 years, as a collective, we're going to all have to change the constructs and the measurements of time. We're going to have
Yes.
to change the calendar. We're going to have to change our considerations about it. And even like possibly, you know, having different time zones and all these different things like daylight savings and, you know, all these different things that we have had in the past is no longer fitting the same way. I think
Yeah.
it's going to happen eventually. I think collective consciousness is going in that direction because there's a lot of pressure and tension that a lot of people feel that time is moving too fast and they're not getting things done or they just are overwhelmed with the idea. But if you remove time from everything and not think about time whatsoever and just do things as like a day-to-day experience, you know, like if you didn't have a clock,
Right.
then it feels like it's just a normal day. So it's really all perspective and perception. And I think we're starting to understand that more and more. Many more people are not just looking at their phone or their time to give them information, they're also reviewing their perception of time, of how much time has changed and what you can do with it better. And can you stretch it out? It's malleable, it's formable like anything, it's energy. So you can make time stretch out, you can slow time down. Like when you're having fun, time goes really fast. If you're having a miserable time, it takes longer to get through it. So it's all
Yes.
perspective, right? It's all perspective.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
Well, I
right.
think that this is a great note. And I just love this show today. I love talking to you, Dennis. I cannot wait till next time.
I want to leave everybody with a funny little meme that I saw relative to time.
Okay. Uh
And I
huh.
just got the biggest kick out of this. Okay.
Okay.
Here's these two guys talking, and one says to the other, "Well, what year is it?" And the other one responds, 300 BC. And he says, "Well, what does BC stand for?" And he says, "Before Christ." He says, "Well, who's Christ?"
Exactly. No reference. We don't know. We don't need to know. I think we're going to be making up a
That made me think, well, how did before, because that's our measurement of time, right?
Mhm.
BC, before Christ, 2,000 years ago. So how did they measure time before that?
And you know what, Dennis? Every country has a different New Year, and there's
Yes,
different calendar systems, and we're not even on the proper calendar system, from what I
exactly.
understand. Yeah, so there's just, I think there's going to be a
Maybe the
reevaluation of all of
proper
this.
counting of time is what we all saw in the very first episodes of Star Trek. Star date
Star date.
367522. Well, how do they arrive at that? What was the starting point for a star date that they
Mm,
quote on Star Trek?
mm,
So there's a little time twister, mind
I
twister
like
there
it.
from years ago just from watching Star Trek. Because I remember wondering about that. Wow, how do they come up with that? How do you calculate
Yeah, maybe they just started a number at anywhere that sounded good.
Yeah. What's the star date today?
And what's the point of time and measurement anyway? And what's the point of aging ourselves with numbers? And what's the point of knowing how fast things go? The natives were only just focusing on the seasons, and there's something to that. And so, I think we should really all reevaluate how we see time. I think that makes a huge difference, so we can breathe a little better, slow time down, enjoy our lives more, feel more, relax more, and not try to keep up with technology all the way. It's not necessary. Yeah.
I think this was a fun way to end this episode.
Yes. Thank you, Dennis, so much. And I can't wait until next time we film, and we'll see you all next time. Bye, everybody.
Episode forthcoming. We will see you all then. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.